Today's show is all about dried fruits. Dried fruit enables you to bake with your favorite fruits all year long. Today, author and fruit preservationist Leda Meredith is going to teach us her techniques for preserving everything from berries to stone fruits at home. We're going to be making an Eccles cake, little hand pies encased in pastry, and you're going to love them with cheese or just as a snack. And we're also making a steamed currant pudding. Plus, author and recipe developer Helen Go puts her exotic spin on the traditional fruit cake. All of this today on Martha Bakes. When it comes to baking, dried fruits can be used in a plethora of ways. And today, cookbook author and foraging enthusiast Leda Meredith is here to shed light on all aspects of drying fruit. Welcome to the show, Leda. It's nice to see you again.
It's great to be here.
Well, how did you become interested in drying your own fruit?
So as you mentioned, I'm a forager, and I gather wild berries and things. And I'm a CSA member, so I have a farm share, and that means that in season there's a surplus of fruit often.
Right, of course.
And this is a way to preserve it for the rest of the year and take advantage of it when it is in peak season.
Do you do anything else to it? You freeze the dried fruits? Or?
No, you don't need to. If they're properly dehydrated, they'll store almost indefinitely.
Oh, great. So tell us the different ways that one could dry fruit.
Okay, so there are two basic ways. One is in a dehydrator. We've got a little home model right there. And the other way is in the oven. The color is a little better if you use the dehydrator. It keeps the color. These, we have some apples over here. These were oven dried. But even though I put these apples in an acidulated water bath like we have over here, they still brown in the oven.
So to 2 quarts of water, 2 lemons or 1 lemon?
I would do 1. So
Right.
the dehydrator preserves the colors a little bit better.
Well, yeah, and look how beautiful the orange slices are. Very pretty. So,
Okay.
so this is the simple dehydrator that one can buy easily.
Very easily.
Yeah.
The advantage of the dehydrator is also that it uses less energy. If you dry in your oven, usually most home ovens only go as low as 150 Fahrenheit, and that's a little high for fruit. So then I actually prop the door open with like a wooden spoon or something. You want about 135 degrees.
Okay.
So this has a dial on it, and most models do, where you can actually choose your temperature.
And so what are the techniques for drying the fruit?
How thick you slice things matters. You should never go thicker than a ½ inch. It's just not going to dry as well.
Okay.
Strawberries, I go thinner. Now these are ones that I already dried. I just slice off the hulls and about this thick. You do not have to pre-treat strawberries, so they can just go straight into the dehydrator or the oven. They don't need the acidulated water bath. They don't need the poaching, just as is. With other foods that need pre-treatment are things that will brown, pears
Like
or
an apple,
apples,
a
exactly. Those need the acidulated water bath.
So the blueberries, would you poach or check?
Yes.
You use the word check.
I don't know where that comes from, but that is the
Like check,
term.
like a
that's
check?
Like check.
Should we try some?
Sure, we can do the blueberries. So I just want to mention the other fruits that I do this with. Grapes, cranberries, anything that has like a smooth skin and a juicy inside. If you don't do this, I did this one time with grapes thinking I would make raisins, and I didn't check them first. And I ended up with these weird puff balls that were like crunchy and bizarre. So we're not going to do that.
So just put
we're
them
just
in
going to drop them right
simmering
into
water?
some simmering water.
For how long?
30 seconds to a minute. What we want is for the skins to crack a little bit. So you know how if you're cooking cranberries to make cranberry sauce, they start popping?
Yeah.
If you stop when they've popped but haven't yet turned into sauce, that's what you want. And so then we can probably get them out. That's
Do you
about
check them
long
even
enough.
if you slice them in half?
No, then you don't need to.
Okay.
I came across one old book that said you don't have to do the poaching to check the fruit. You can actually go through with a pin and pop every single berry. And I was like, okay, somebody had way too much time.
It's just allowing the moisture to escape.
Exactly.
Somehow.
You're just giving a little spot that the moisture can come out of.
Now this is the tray.
You got it. Yeah. This.
What's this paper?
This is a silicone-coated dehydrator tray. You could make your own out of parchment paper, but this is reusable, which is nice. Because when the berries dry, as you can see, they're tiny. And they'll fall through the dehydrator trays. So for anything that's going to be really tiny when it dries, you just put them on.
So we can put these on?
We can put them on there.
Oh yeah, you can see that the
if you didn't,
blue is starting to...
It's starting to run, which is what we want. Actually, we want them to be able to evaporate a little bit.
So that goes right up here.
So that just goes right up there.
And then how long does it take to dehydrate a blueberry like that?
So a blueberry is about 8 hours.
Oh, so
and
do this at night, go to bed,
exactly.
and then in the morning your stuff is all ready.
And it just floats on top.
It just floats,
yeah.
okay.
And then when you take them out, you don't put them straight into jars immediately, even though you're going to store them that way eventually. But if you know when you make cookies and the texture changes as they cool, they get crunchier and they crisp up. Same thing with dried fruit. So there's a process called conditioning where you let the fruit sit at room temperature and cool off when it comes out of the oven or the dehydrator for about 10 minutes. And then you transfer them into jars.
And then these are commercially dried.
Yes, so you can see the color is much more vibrant on
But what have they used to keep the color? Yeah.
Right. So these are treated with sulfur, which is not really good for you, and it gives some people headaches. These are home-dried ones that I did.
I want to taste the difference.
And you can see they don't keep the bright color, but I think they're tasty and they're healthier.
They're very good.
Yeah. I made some little muffins. That was
great. What are those?
In here. So these I used the dried strawberries and dried oranges.
Oh, I'll take a little bite. Oh, so good.
And the dried fruit, it's got an intense flavor. So you get these little morsels, these little pops of flavor when you cook with dried fruit.
So if you have some tasty strawberries, tasty raspberries, blackberries, apples, you can put into practice what Leda has taught us today. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Once you've tried them, you'll understand why Eccles Cakes are a British institution. The word Eccles comes from the town of Eccles in England. They aren't traditional cakes as we know them, but rather flaky, buttery ham pies filled with a tasty combination of dried fruit. And they start with a pâte brisée, which is their basic pie crust. 2.5 cups of flour in the food processor. The fastest way to make the pastry is in a food processor. And a teaspoon of salt, whole teaspoon, and a whole teaspoon of sugar. And pulse this so that everything's mixed up well. And have your butter, 2 sticks, 1/2 pound of unsalted butter, cut into nice little 1/4-inch cubes. And just pulse this for a few seconds until you have the butter pretty much broken up, but it's still visible. So now you can add a 1/2 cup of iced water down the tube. And on a real humid, hot day, probably a 1/4 cup of water. On a dry, cool day, maybe close to a 1/2 cup. Just about right. There, I think that's fine. It looks perfect. Just squeeze it together and it comes together in your hand. So now divide this dough in half and wrap each half in plastic wrap. And it should chill for at least an hour and up to a day or so in the refrigerator. This single batch of pâte brisée will make approximately 14 of our beautiful Eccles cakes or hand pies. And now for the filling of the Eccles cakes. In the olden days, currants were the traditional filling, but we're going to use figs and golden raisins, dates, as well as dark raisins, 1/4 cup of each, finely chopped. Now, these are very easy to chop by hand. You can also chop them in the food processor, but I suggest doing it by hand. They chop up easier that way. They're dried, but we're now going to undry them by plumping them in 1 cup of boiling water. Let this sit in the boiling water for at least 15 minutes. I have a swap right here so you can see how much water was absorbed. Quite a bit, don't you think? So now we're going to strain the soaked fruit through a sieve and discard that excess water. The filling will be sweet with a little zest of orange. So just pour that back in the bowl. And so to the rehydrated fruit, 1/2 cup of granular sugar, 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and a pinch of coarse salt. And stir this up. And don't forget an important ingredient, the zest of 1/2 of a bright-skinned orange. And the juice of a third of an orange. You can just squeeze it with your reamer. This is called a juice reamer. There. So that's your filling. Now this should chill until you roll out your pastry. It'll be the perfect filling for your Eccles cakes. So now take your first round of pastry and just roll it into a thin disc. We're going to be cutting the pastry into 4-inch rounds. You should be able to get about 7 rounds out of a half. And these can just be put on a parchment-lined sheet, ready for filling. Now, if the temperature is correct in your room and these are not soft, they can be filled immediately and then chilled once filled. And then to make the little cakes, brush around the edge of your pastry with an egg wash, just 1 egg whisked together with a teaspoon or so of cold water. This is your glue. And a scant tablespoon of filling right in the center. And it's very good. And fold this over. So then you can pick these up, use a little flour, and press. And those are ready to chill and then bake. So just continue until you're finished with all your Eccles cakes. And then lightly egg wash the tops of each of your chilled hand pies. And as an added precaution, make 3 little slits with the point of a sharp knife right in the top of each Eccles cake. This will let steam out, just like you make vents in the top of a pie. And then, as an added glorification, sprinkle with sanding sugar. And then these pop right into a 375-degree preheated oven, 30 to 35 minutes until golden brown. Rotate the sheets halfway through, and you'll see how beautiful they come out of the oven. So this is what they look like when they come out of the oven. And they really are best eaten fresh. I love them with dried fruits and, of course, English cheeses, a blue Caerphilly, a wonderful cheddar. Stack them up and enjoy. And they stay very nicely in a covered container for a few days. They're perfect for tea time or any time. Enjoy. Whether you call it Spotted Dick or Spotted Richard, steamed currant pudding is one of the most beloved British desserts. It really comes from pudic, which is an ancient British word for pudding. And the spots in the spotted pudding are really dried currants that have been plumped in half a cup of warm brandy. And we're using 1 cup of plumped dried currants. And these have already been done and cooled. And for the pudding base, 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 tablespoon of double-acting baking powder. Just add that right in. 1 teaspoon of salt, half a cup of sugar. Stir that around. And we're going to cut the butter into the flour. And we have 1 1/2 sticks of butter cut into like 1/2-inch pieces, and just use your pastry cutter and cut that in. You can do this, of course, in the food processor quickly. This is a nice sharp-edged pastry cutter. You can also use it very nicely for egg salad. It cuts up hard-boiled eggs very well. That looks good. Now for the wet ingredients. 4 eggs. Break up the eggs and add 1/3 cup of heavy cream. So it's a really heavy batter. That's good. And the zest of the lemon can go right into the bowl. And I'm zesting with a wood rasp. These come in various configurations, but just make sure your rasp is nice and sharp. And using a hand juicer, squeeze your lemon juice right into the liquid, your egg and cream. So it's the juice of 1 lemon. There. So this can be put right into your dry ingredients, and the lemon juice really does thicken up your egg and cream. And add your soaked currants with all of the brandy that was in the bowl. It smells so good. And we're going to be steaming this, so have a large pot of water tightly covered. This one is just a stock pot. And I have a rack in the bottom. Oh, the water's already boiling. Put your pudding mixture. This is a 2.5 quart pudding bowl that is well buttered. I have it on a strip of aluminum foil. This will allow me to lower it into the pot without burning myself. And once your pudding is in the bowl, don't forget to cover it. Very important to cover it with a round of parchment. I've buttered the parchment and a piece of aluminum foil. And tightly crimp the foil over the rim of the pudding. There, you can see that it's quite secure. And then lift it right in the pot. Make sure the water is 3/4 of the way up the pudding bowl. Then you can cover, bring it to a rolling boil, and then reduce to a simmer and simmer for 1 hour and 15 minutes, or until the pudding registers 180 degrees on a thermometer inserted right into the middle of the pudding. So our pudding has cooked. Look how nice and puffy it has gotten. And it can be now turned out of its mold onto a serving platter. So it gets a pretty nice color. And you can strew some currants around like that and get it ready for serving. And I love to serve it with a crème anglaise, an English cream. I have brought to a simmer 1 1/4 cups of whole milk, 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream, and 1 vanilla bean that's been split and scraped. This is what we're going to add to 4 large egg yolks. A pinch of salt into the egg yolks, and 3 tablespoons of sugar. So it's not a terribly sweet sauce, but it is a rich sauce. The hot milk will melt the sugar and add this very slowly, just a little at a time. This is called tempering. Now this gets returned to the pot, and you again cook it until the mixture thickens. Again, being extremely careful not to curdle the eggs. And whisk, and do not let it boil. And the way to tell that it's done is to coat a wooden spoon, and if a line remains, it's done. That's about right. You see the line that's drawn by your finger does not close up, so it is absolutely done. Okay, so now you can put the mixture through a sieve to get out any lumps. Makes a more delicate and elegant sauce this way. Once your cream is at room temperature or cold, you can just decant it into a small pitcher to serve with your pudding. Spotted Richard or Spotted Dick, whatever you want to call it, served with crème anglaise, this is guaranteed to satisfy anyone with a sweet tooth. Enjoy. London-based cookbook author and lead recipe developer for a popular group of restaurants, Helen Go is known for shaking up desserts. And such is the case with her recipe for a simple cake bursting with flavor from a medley of dried fruits. It's very nice to finally meet you.
Thank you so much.
Well, I read that you grew up in Malaysia and in Australia.
Yes.
And then emigrated to London.
Yes.
A hotbed of all kinds of wonderful new restaurants.
Yeah.
But today you're introducing us to a Moroccan fruit cake using dried fruits. And how many different kinds of dried fruits?
There are 5 in here. I have prunes, which are kind of dark and dramatic, and I love the visuals of that. And I love the apricots because it's bright and it's cheery.
They have the right color.
They have the right color. And also, I think they're slightly tangier, a little bit sharper, and I like the contrast with the sweeter raisins, which I have a sort of caramelized note to it.
So dark raisins.
Dark raisins, currants.
And then you have also figs.
Figs, because the tiny seeds just kind of crackle and pop in your mouth, and I love that texture of it.
So where does the Morocco connection come in?
It's a very tiny but important part of this cake, and it's 2 teaspoons of ras el hanout. It's a combination of sweet and savory spices.
Yes.
So you just put all the fruits together, half a cup of each fruit, and then you just put some hot tea.
Black tea or?
Black tea. I like a very strong black tea. So Assam is a really nice tea. Ideally, you leave this to soak overnight.
Well, we made one for you.
There we are. You can see how much.
Swap out,
you can see how it's really plumped up.
It really does soak up the juice.
Yeah. So while that's plumping up or hydrating, we put the dry ingredients together. So you've got self-raising flour.
1.5 cups.
1.5 cups.
Okay.
And then sift the flour with some salt.
Okay, I'll put my
to sift it
quarter of a teaspoon of salt. And how much ras el hanout?
2 teaspoons ras el hanout.
2 teaspoons.
I like to make my own ras el hanout.
So what do you put in it?
Well, I put in coriander, cumin, cinnamon, ginger, turmeric, and I really love black pepper in it too.
So I love black pepper in everything.
Yes, me too. Black pepper and rose petals. And then you want to put the brown sugar.
Oh, how much brown sugar?
3/4 of a cup.
So packed brown sugar.
Brown sugar. And then it's just a matter of popping them together. And an egg.
Just 1 egg. Okay.
Just 1 egg. Really simple. You want it to be a dropping consistency, and you add enough milk or liquid to get it to that dropping consistency.
Oh, just do it.
Just enough to moisten
it.
it.
Okay.
Okay, that's it. Now we pop it into the pan.
What a simple cake this is.
It's simple, and the complexity is all in the fruit and the tea and the spice all together. That's it, and that just goes into an oven, 375.
375 for how
For
long?
about 50 minutes.
Set your timer. Well, it looks so beautiful.
It does keep very well, actually. So if you want to make it ahead, you could do that. After about day 3, if it gets a little bit dry, you can pop it in the toaster.
Oh, great.
You'll see that it's not really spicy exactly, but it just has a warmth to it.
May I?
Oh, absolutely.
And then you
Some
butter it?
butter, yeah.
Oh, salted butter?
Salted butter,
yes.
yes.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree, salted butter.
So I quite like that you've got some fruits that are small pieces and then some that are much larger.
So good.
It's so simple. I'm justified in putting the lashings of butter because there's no butter in it.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. Well, it'll look very pretty, sliced and
Let's slice them.
put on this beautiful brass tray and served to your family and your friends.
I like it thickly sliced, but
so do I.
You can do it.
Just delicious. And I can taste every one of the spices.
You can, right?
Yes,
It's
you can.
just the warmth that it gives it that sort of exotic touch without it being too spicy.
Well, thank you so much for traveling all this way.
Thanks so much.
Best of luck with your books and your recipe
you.
planning, and give our best regards to everyone in your family in London.
Thank you very much, Martha.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you for watching. See you on the next episode of Martha Bakes.
One of my favorite recipes is French crepes. Freeze them in between sheets of parchment paper. And then for breakfast, squeeze some lemon over the top, a bit of powdered sugar, and just fold it. For lunch, what I like to do is fold cooked spinach with sauteed onions, ricotta cheese, parmesan, and bake it with a little bit of cream and cheese. And for a last-minute birthday cake, you could layer it with whipped cream, alternating with lemon curd or even jam. Give it a shot.